Welcome to the Financial Finesse Podcast, where we'll be discussing tips on how to handle your money and life with skill and style. Your host, Cathy Curtis, CFP, has been helping make finance accessible and intriguing for women for almost 20 years. You'll get savvy, actionable ideas listening to her conversations with some of the coolest and smartest women on the planet. And now, here's your host, Cathy Curtis.
Hi, I'm Cathy Curtis. Welcome to the Financial Finesse Podcast, and if you're a regular listener, welcome back. In addition to hosting this podcast, I'm a full-time financial advisor based in Oakland, California. My firm, Curtis Financial Planning, is an independent financial planning and investment advisory firm specializing in the unique financial needs of women who take the lead in their household finances. Our goal is to be a fiduciary financial partner to our clients, helping them manage their finances and secure their future so they can get more enjoyment out of their money today. On today's episode of Financial Finesse, I'm interviewing Lis McKinley, a certified professional organizer and move manager. Lis is the owner of Let's Make Room, a residential organizing and move management company that has organized hundreds of living, storage, and work areas in the San Francisco Bay Area and beyond. Lis is a recognized public speaker on personal productivity, organizing, and well-being. She is also a trained marriage and family therapist holding a Master's of Arts degree in clinical psychology from John F. Kennedy University. While you may be thinking, what does home organizing have to do with personal finance? I think you'll be surprised to learn how many parallels there are between what Lis does as a personal organizer and what I do as a financial advisor when it comes to helping our clients achieve their goals and aspirations. You'll hear how mindset is the number one determinant of maintaining an organized life and how Lis helps her clients get unstuck from the bad habits that keep their homes cluttered. You may also get some great ideas for how to organize your living space if it needs a refresh. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Lis McKinley, and as always, please check the show notes for more helpful resources. Hi, Lis. Welcome to Financial Finesse.
Hi, Cathy. I'm delighted to be here. Great to see you.
It's so good to see you too. I know we saw each other pre-COVID, maybe 2 years ago or so.
That seems like 100 years ago.
It really does. So
it's a whole different world.
Yeah, thank God things are changing. We'll have to see each other in person soon because I know you're in Oakland too.
I would love that.
Yes. So let's get into it. I want to ask you some questions about what you do. You provide a very valuable service to people in your organizing business. And I know you do way more than just organizing. But for somebody who has a very short amount of time to listen to this podcast and just tunes in because they are not organized and they really want to know how to get organized, what would be your top 3 words of wisdom for somebody who wants to be a more organized person?
Oh, it's a great question. Well, the first thing I would say is don't organize your life based on what you see in a magazine or on Instagram or on TV. You should really organize your life for your real life, for your real habits. And if you've been struggling with disorganization your whole life, don't expect things to change overnight. New habits take time to develop. So being patient with yourself and forgiving with yourself, it's, learning to organize and learning to develop organizing habits is not unlike learning any other habit. It takes time to assimilate them. And then for a lot of people, they're under the belief that sorting and categorizing is organizing. It's not. It's an important part of it, but it's only the first part. It's only the part that needs to happen to make everything else fall into place. But
give an example of sorting and categorizing that people do in place of true organizing.
They make piles. People make piles. They make lots of piles. And then nothing ever gets done with the piles. So the hardest part in organizing is not sorting and categorizing as much as it's important. The hardest part in organizing, especially if you've got more stuff than you have space for, is what I call curating. It's making those tough decisions about what you want to keep and what you're willing to let go of. And if it was all about putting things in pretty containers, I'd be out of a job, and everybody would be able to do this so easily. So it's, there's a saying in my industry that clutter is nothing more than delayed decision making. But I've often asked myself, well, why is it delayed? And this doesn't seem to get addressed very much, but it's delayed because people don't know what questions to ask themselves to help them decide whether they want this pen or not.
Right.
And that's where my experience comes in as a professional organizer, is that I don't have an opinion about what they keep or toss. I really don't, but I have a very strong opinion about helping them meet their goals.
Yeah,
So
let me just chime in here, because you just wrote a great blog post about how you're organized. You don't have to be the perfect Instagrammer, right? And post this beautiful home. It's really more how you are with your life. And you gave a really great example of people who want to put all their recipes in a binder, laminate them, and have it all organized. And you know how much time, I know how much time that would take. And your point is really well taken. I know me, I have a laminated recipe folder. Do I ever look at it? No. I go to the internet, or I go to my array of cookbooks, and I have a lot of great cookbooks. And I get a lot of joy in going to my cookbooks because I feel like I'm using them. That gives me a lot of pleasure. So, and just think of the time wasted in doing that collating and everything else.
Exactly. It's, there's so many things that we want to do in life, and there's so many, competing priorities. If I hear a client say to me that they are wanting to, go through this big process of, pulling out the 3-hole punch and putting things in sheet protectors and finding the binder, I'll ask them, that's a lot of homework for you. Is that really worth your time? And a lot of my clients know that this is something I will ask them over and over again. Is this really worth your time? Now, for some, it may be. I'm not the one to make that decision, but I am going to ask that question, because people confuse their real lives with this kind of Instagram life that they imagine having.
Or the Martha Stewart image, right? Everything has to be perfect, and you do these intricate little projects, and it's very satisfying. But really, they take a lot of time.
They do. And if you have the time and you don't, and it's something that gives you joy and pleasure, and you're not, you have to be careful not to let the small stuff get in the way of the big stuff. So if you're surrounded with by a house full of clutter, and you're spending your time doing little chalkboard labels, it's going to be a challenge for you to get through all the other things. And it's
another great example in my own life. I used to collect business cards like we all did, right? I don't anymore. Right. I don't even do business cards anymore. Nobody does that. Isn't that interesting? And that's a thing of the past. And then
for some people.
Oh, okay.
For some people. Yeah.
Okay.
Some people still have quite a collection.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
So so then I started, when I would ask my assistant, enter this contact into my contact management system, right? And then I realized a lot of the time when I'm trying to find someone's contact information, again, I do a Google search.
Right.
So now I'm not having them all entered. I have my clients entered because I use my tools in a way communicate with clients, but I'm talking about random people I meet. I don't even do that anymore because
that's a perfect example. Yeah, that's an example of, so what do you do in real life? So
Right.
people will save the business card, but in real life, what you do, Cathy, is you go on Google. So that's part of my role as an organizer, is to help people connect the dots between, the object and what they do in real life.
Exactly. I love that. That's just the perfect concept. So, and I just want to get into the mechanics of what you do just a little, because this fascinates me. So you go into someone's space, right? And there's all this stuff to be organized. Do you literally pick up everything and go, is this really useful to you? I mean, how long do sessions last for? And how do you get through it when someone has a lot of clutter?
One piece at a time, often.
Wow.
So here's what happens. It doesn't really matter if it's a junk drawer or a garage or your entire home. The process is going to be the same. So what we do, for example, we've got a client coming up who has an attic full of things. It's an attic that takes up the entire floor plan of her home. So it's a big attic and it's stuffed full, and she's moving and she has to go through all of those things.
Yeah.
So what we do is we'll have, so the items, she's going to take care of having all the items brought down from the attic and stage them in her backyard.
Okay.
And then we're going to go in, and we bring all of our own tools and tables and bags and boxes, and we basically set up like a reverse shopping trip. We pull everything out and we sort like with like. So stuffed animals with stuffed animals, Christmas items with Christmas items, office supplies with office supplies, wedding paraphernalia, everything is, friends with friends or like with like.
Kind of like the Marie Kondo approach, but you did it before her, right?
Marie Kondo was not even a concept in her mother's womb when a lot of my colleagues got started in this business. She just, but all credit to her for having a great marketing team.
Yes.
But the sorting is very important, because I can tell you it's very difficult to make decisions about things when they're all jumbled together or in boxes. It's much easier to say, oh, I have 16 pairs of black pants, and realize I don't need 16 pairs of black pants. I like these, but I don't like these, or these are ripped and, so it's an opportunity. It's also kind of a wake-up call for clients. They actually, it's when they see all of their stuff spread out and, a large space, it's kind of a wake-up call to them. Like, oh my God, look at all of this stuff I've accumulated and never even looked at or used or rarely.
Or I really do have 20 white t-shirts that look exactly the same. I know, believe me. So do you do a lot of closet work too?
We do any space where the clients are really wanting to have, make it more functional.
Okay.
We don't do installations of, but we might recommend, depending upon a client's preferences, aesthetic, budget, we might recommend a different closet system. But what we will do is advise them along the way how to make that work. So for example, if they choose a particular closet system, we can tell them how much long hang space they need, how much short hang space they need. Wow. And that comes from sorting. So we sort everything. And like I said earlier, sorting or categorizing is not organizing, but it's critical to get to the next step, which is purging or parting with, or what I call curating. And it's
I love the word curating, so much better than purging. Or getting
because curating is about having a vision for your stuff or your life that everything fits. It's like having a personal mission statement. If you every time you come up with something, if it doesn't fit your personal mission statement, you can let it go. If something doesn't fit your vision of how you want to live your life, you can let it go. And what you end up left with are the things that really are meaningful, useful. I mean, I can't say that everything's going to spark joy in your life. You know, your Clorox is not going to spark joy, but you're going to use it, right? So
Yeah.
there are going to be things that you use. There are going to be things that you love. There are going to be things that you're sentimentally attached to and can't let go of or don't want to let go of. You know, there's a whole series of reasons that people hold on to stuff, but there's also a whole series of reasons that people can let go. And
Yeah.
that's what happens during the curator purge process. And then it's about assigning a home. So everything, just like you live in your home, you don't go to the home next door. Everything in your home should ideally have a home. And if you have kids, this is a particularly appealing concept for kids because it's a way to get kids involved in the whole process of organizing. When you ask your child, for example, you know, where does this doll live? Let's bring him or her back to his home. And so everything in your home has a home. And if it doesn't, what ends up happening is it just gets dropped on the first horizontal space that's available, which is what a lot of people do.
Yeah.
And so one of the habits that I try to impart to my clients is the concept of assigning a home to things, not based on conventional wisdom, but based on how they really lives. So
Great
if you
idea.
have, yeah, it's all
Let
about
me
how
go
you
back
really
to
live.
one concept
Go
you
ahead.
talked about that I find really interesting is the personal mission statement. So what if someone doesn't know what their personal mission statement is? And maybe that's the reason that they're not organized in the first place. This is where all the psychological and emotional components of being organized come in, right? I mean, it's not just the physical act of organizing, it's what's in someone's head and then how can they turn it into a habit, right?
Yes. Well, I use the example of a personal mission statement because that's a piece of the other work I do, the work that I'm doing more one-on-one with folks. But it's a great metaphor.
It is.
For helping people decide, you know, if you don't, let's say your kids have all grown and they've left and you don't really do a big Christmas decoration anymore. That's not part of your current life. Then when you come across all the Christmas decorations, it's a lot easier to say, oh, well, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to put up all these 8 million decorations because that's not my life now. It may have been my life before, but it's not my life now. So it's a way
there may
of
be some grieving around that too, right? There may be a little grieving process and things like that. But people can let go.
Trust me, there's a lot of grief that comes up in this relationship. I work with clients who've just lost, who've recently lost family members, spouses, and this is the point where you really have to stop and give time for the client to grieve, because every item, every piece of paper, every object is going to elicit a memory. But just because it elicits a memory does not necessarily mean it honors the person's memory. Yeah. So there's a very gentle process that has to take place for the client to decide, is this going to be part of my life now? Does this honor the memory of my loved one by keeping this? Would they want me to keep it? Would I use it? Or would I just, how is it going to honor them if I just stick it in a container and stuff it in my basement somewhere?
Right.
So
this is where your clinical psychology and therapy background probably really comes in with the work you do with clients, right?
And my experience just doing this for 12 plus years.
Long. Yeah. Talk a little bit about, I know you're pivoting to a little bit different way of doing business, or you're adding on a business where you are bringing in the more, talk about that a little bit, because it seems to me the two would really work well together.
Well, I've been doing this for 12 years now. I have a team of about 6 employees and 6 contractors. And most of the work that we've been doing has been these kind of large scale projects that are prompted primarily by something like a move. And so we have to get in there and in a short, relatively short amount of time, downsize and get somebody unpacked or manage their moves. And I had found over the past couple of years that I was really missing the chance to work more interpersonally with my clients, like I had when I first started, and like I had years and years ago when I trained as a marriage and family therapist. And I was really missing that, but I knew I didn't want to do, clinical work or work in mental health anymore. I wanted
Right.
to work with people, who, like me, might have come to a point in their lives where they wanted to make some changes, but they were, they couldn't get the clarity that they needed, or, things were kind of still out of focus, and they, wanted to work with someone who could ask them the right questions and help them get some clarity on not maybe just future dreams, but how to deal with day-to-day situations. I had a client who was holding on to some, uncomfortable thoughts about a family member, and it was really kind of bothering them. And it was, and so we worked on how to objectify that voice in their heads and help them work with how to sort of shift their perspective on it. If you will, because the work I do is really perspective work, and it's about helping people look differently, kind of shifting the view of things so that they can kind of be freed up to see things differently. And
So
it's
when
much more nuanced.
when you were working with a client on a typical organizing project, would you find yourself getting into these conversations? And
Not
realize,
really, no.
No? Okay.
Yeah, not to the, no, because it took me some time to figure out that was where I wanted to go.
Okay.
And it's really funny that you should ask that question, because what this new service I'm offering, which is really more about helping create more joy in people's life, came out of my own I would say my own impatience over what I was missing and what I couldn't initially kind of get some clarity on. So I sought the help of a coach, and over time got very clear about what the work was that I wanted to add onto my existing business. So it's basically the focus of where I'm going next with Let's Make Room, because I found that after 12 years of doing on-site work and managing these large-scale good jobs, I was really missing more of the interpersonal work. And I wanted to work with people who had goals and dreams that they wanted to achieve, and help them find their way towards them. So that was, I call myself a personal advocate.
Okay.
And it's kind of brings in both my background in psychology and consulting and a newfound interest in mindfulness. So I'm not a therapist, and I don't pretend to be, but often people experience this work as therapeutic.
Yes. And you don't have to change the name of your company. Let's Make Room can be taken so many different ways. Let's make room in your home through organizing, but also
life.
Let's make room in your mind for what you want to bring into your life. And so many, it's just a great name for the business.
Thank you.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, well, that's why right now it's actually as part of my website, it's part of my overall business model. It's, I didn't get into this business because I was a born organizer. I got into this business because I started to see the value of how making room in one's life enabled them to discover untapped parts of themselves. So in a way, I've sort of come full circle. And initially, it was very tangible in terms of, stuff and space. But now it's kind of coming more around to the person. And that's very, very gratifying to me. And, before I forget, I just wanted to mention, you had asked me in the beginning of our conversation about tips.
Mm-hmm.
The one tip that I didn't mention that I think it's really important is don't make your stuff more important than you are.
That's a great one.
I've seen this happen. People have pushed themselves out of their own home offices or out of their own rooms because they haven't been able to let go of things, and they can't actually get in there.
Yeah.
So they've made their stuff more important than they are.
Yeah.
And
well, I guess the extreme is the hoarder, right? Where
yeah.
the stuff takes over your home. But do you find there's lots of iterations in between?
Absolutely. We all have a little bit of that in us.
Mhm.
Everyone does. It's on steroids for someone with chronic hoarding disorder.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't work with that population because it is a mental health issue, and it takes a really specialized interdisciplinary approach to work with people who've got that mental health issue.
Okay.
But when
That
it
makes
does
sense.
come up, yeah, I can recommend people.
Let me ask you, I know this is a podcast that interviews women, and I think I have a lot of women listeners. I love having men listeners too, by the way. But I'm just curious because I know in my practice as a financial advisor, women clients communicate differently than men, for example. And they're more open. They let me know about themselves earlier on in the process so that I can help them. You know, the more I know about my clients, the better when it comes to creating financial plans. And I'm wondering, you probably work with a mix, right? You work with men and women. And is there any difference in the way they interact with you?
Not strangely enough, not really. But the difference is that often men don't ask for help. It's their spouses that will ask on their behalf.
Okay.
And then I will say, well, is this for you or is this for your spouse, for your husband? And they'll say, well, my husband's the one with the clutter issue. And I'll say, well, is it a problem for him? And if it is a problem for them and they're willing and they want to talk to me, that's fine. But if it's not a problem for them and it's only a problem for the wife, there is nothing I can do.
Yeah.
Because, you know, why would you want to change something that's not a problem for you? So they get their motivation from, wanting to please. So if they're often, a man will come to me because his wife is very frustrated and they'll want to make things better. Or because they recognize that there's a cost to themselves that they really care about.
Okay.
But it's actually, the model that we use is very straightforward. It's we can get into the emotional content of things, but often it's just, it can be a very simple process.
Very
like you like it.
Very systematized, I'm sure. You probably have a checklist. We start here, we do this, we do this, we do this. Right? Yeah.
And it's and I, find that when I demonstrate the process that we use in our initial meetings, there's sort of I can almost feel in the air that the sense of relief that comes from, the spouses of, the husbands of the clients, because they go, oh, this makes sense. I can do this. And they're often, great advocates if their wives or their partners are struggling. Sometimes one person in the couple can help influence the situation. Now, that being said, I have a very strong rule, which is that if you are the owner of the decision on, this stapler, you don't get to tell the other person, oh, I want that stapler, or why wouldn't you keep that stapler, or you've had that stapler your whole life. It's like, no, that's where my therapy background comes in. You don't get to, there's no crosstalk. It's whoever owns the stapler gets to make the decision about the stapler.
I'm sure you run into that a lot.
So I've set that rule up from the start. Yeah.
And do people follow it?
Yes. I think they find it a relief, actually.
Okay, good.
Yeah, because, and I think they're sort of, they realize that they don't have to take control of that situation too.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've got some real success stories with clients that what you do is transformational for them. Can you share any of those?
Well, of course, they would be the best ones to judge that. But, there are very pragmatic sort of transformations that happen. So, for example, we recently worked with a senior couple who, after 30 plus years of living their home in Oakland, had decided to move to the East Coast where both of their children lived, especially because one of their daughters was about to have a baby. And they had, and so there was some time sensitivity. That baby was going to be coming in mid-May, and we met this couple, I think, at the end of February, maybe the beginning of March. So what we did for them was we first, basically decluttered and downsized their homes room by room. And then we set up an online sale of all the things that they didn't want. And we sold them through a platform called Max Sold. If you're familiar with Max Sold, it's an online auction sale for selling really everyday items. It's not for super high value, although sometimes there are high value items, but it's a great way for our clients to minimize the cost of moving and hauling and that sort of thing.
I'll add that to the show notes. Do they buy like old china sets and old silver sets and things like that? That's always an issue with people.
Individual people bid on things. So they might get, so it's Max Sold makes it, puts it online, not unlike eBay, and people bid on them. So somebody might get a beautiful china set for $1, but it depends on what the competition is, especially close to the end of the sale.
Yeah.
We made our client the sale made almost $8,000, of which more than $5,000 went to the client. So
and was this on this website that you're talking about? That all the money was raised?
Yeah, it is. And it's used by a lot of professional organizers like myself who want to help clients downsize their homes, but really are uncomfortable with the idea of donating everything.
Right.
And would prefer it getting in the hands of somebody who can use them, even if they don't end up spending that much.
Yes. And who uploads who does all that work? That's a lot of work. Photos.
Yours truly and my crew. Yes, It's a lot. It is. We create lots of things. So like items like collectibles or china, or it might just be individual pieces of furniture. We photograph them, we describe them, we catalog them in Max Sold's app, and then the sale goes live, and a week later the sale closes and all the buyers come to us with my team, and they're there to come pick them up, and they're all scheduled. And it goes fairly smoothly. And the things that don't get picked up, often we give away for free, or we find a way to find homes for them on the same day. Okay. So it's a great situation. So this couple, we did this for them. And then afterwards, I managed their move back to the East Coast. And so
and what did that entail? Describe that. What did you do for them?
I had to research and find the right movers for them and negotiate the contracts, make sure they weren't going to get ripped off. And, working with movers, especially interstate movers, is really, can be a challenging situation. And,
I hear that all the time.
Yeah. And it really all comes down to two things. It comes down to the driver, and it comes down to the local agent, because the local agent are the ones who do the packing and bring in the interstate company. Okay. And so it's knowing how all of this works behind the scenes and knowing how to make sure that things get done. And that, I had to negotiate I went to two different movers and had to kind of get the best situation for my clients. And then once that's done, then the movers come and I'm there on pack and move day to make sure everything gets done according to plan. And the funny thing is that in this particular situation, the load day, the actual load on the truck day happened the same day I was scheduled for my second vaccine. So I had to get, it had to be done. I literally ran out of there to go get my second vaccine and then came back to the house to just make sure, there wasn't any lingering issues.
Which vaccine did you get?
Oh, Pfizer.
Okay, yeah. I think that had less side effects on the second. I got Moderna, and the day of it, I was fine. That evening, I went down. It was bad. So I did things all day long until the evening, and then I was sick the whole next day.
Right. That's fairly common. So anyway, the upshot of this client was that they are now back east. Their daughter had the baby, and they're getting ready to move into their new home.
That's an incredible story. So you handled the whole thing from start to finish, taking
along
all
with my team. Yes.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know it's not just you doing it. You imagine
right. Exactly. No. Yeah.
Yeah, you and your team. That's
right.
really a service that a lot of people would find valuable. Just switching a little bit. I know these are the big situations, right? Like they're one-time big situations. You're helping somebody move. They got a new job. They're going to another state. They're moving to be closer to their grandkids or things like that. Do you work with people they want you to do an organizing project in their home because it's out of control somewhere, their kitchen or their office, or maybe many rooms, and they hire you for an engagement. And I'm sure it's some time frame that you have that you work with people. How do you know that they're not falling back into old habits? And do you check in with them? Do you have some kind of ongoing service, or how does that work?
It's a really good question. And I would like to say that, yes, we do check in. I do check in as part of that's just part of who I am. There are certain, my clients are very special to me, and I often find myself thinking about them and just shooting them an email and saying, just thinking about you, how's everything been since we were there? But I'm not, I recognize that for a lot of people, this is a big behavior change. And when we come in and do the organizing, as much as we try to impart what we know, it's not as if I'm working with them one-on-one on a long-term basis and teaching them. So what often happens is people do slide back, and, imagine you lost, some huge amount of weight or something, and I can speak very personally about this, and you gain it back. And so there's a lot of shame you feel about it, and you may not want to bring somebody back in again. I really do try to minimize the amount of feelings around that, but people just feel that way. And so we offer an opportunity to do maintenance if they wish. It depends on the client. There's some clients who hire us sort of on a long-term, weekly or monthly basis to help them with different projects. And I would say those clients learn the most from this experience.
Yeah, I would think
the ones that just want us to get,
long-term relationships are so valuable because you have a chance to get to know one another. You can help them create habits because, habits are hard to develop, and you can flop, but you can get right back on the bandwagon and keep trying. But you need to have some catalyst to remind you of that.
And that's actually sort of what got me into this new work that I'm doing. To help people take more of a deeper look into what's keeping them stuck in the same habits, whether it's an organizing habit or, they're not getting enough done, or they are just frustrated with some aspect of their lives. But, my business model primarily up until recently has been more like a contractor, get in there, do the work and get out.
Yeah. I think your pivot is going to be really valuable for people. It makes so much sense with all the background, all the experience that you're going to do that. It really does.
It's been a challenge because I've also had to shift a lot of the way I have been working. Because when I'm working with clients on get in there, get it done, get out projects, I'm much more directive. Whereas when I'm working with clients one-on-one who are dealing with, trying to sort of clear the weeds of their lives, and where I'm more of a field guide, if you will, I'm more about eliciting from them what's getting in their way. So it's it's more of an exploratory or a collaborative relationship where I'm reflecting back to them what I'm hearing, and helping them gain clarity themselves, rather than me saying, being more, directive about, well, I think you need to.
I totally, there's so many parallels to what I do to what you do. Doing a one-time planning engagement, it's almost like you have to be directive, because they're going away, and you got to impart everything you want them to know in that short amount of time, right? Whereas an ongoing relationship, it can develop over time, and you can really help change habits and things over time. It's so similar. And I find the ongoing so much more satisfying than the short term where you're done. And then you're kind of left wondering what happened. Did they implement these changes? Did they not? Mm-hmm. You don't really know unless you have a way to check back in or re-engage.
Right. For me, it's a different level of satisfaction. It's very satisfying to go into a person's home and come, this is why I got into the business originally, because I wanted to do tangible change. So it's wonderful to go in and be able to organize, a space, a closet, whatever it is, a kitchen, and know that when you left, it was beautiful.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. So it's a different level of satisfaction. And, but then it's the kind of satisfaction I get from working more interpersonally with clients, and not so much about their physical stuff, but more about their I don't want to even say psychological stuff, but the thing, their thoughts and dreams. That's a whole different level of satisfaction.
Yeah.
So I get to have
both. We all evolve in our work. And sometimes it's not bored, but you do one thing too many times. You want to branch out and test your skills and do other things too. And it sounds like that's what you're on the path to do.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. There's, we all grow in our work in some way. And for me, this was the logical next step.
Yes, it sounds definitely. So let me ask you this. Do you think that people who are organized have reached some level of organization in their lives are more successful than other people? And conversely, do you think a disorganized person can reach their goals and be successful?
That's a really interesting question. I think it certainly doesn't hurt. It helps a lot. It depends upon the person. Sometimes what a person's environment is a reflection of their inner environment, of their inner world, of what's going on inside. So it may be that, therapists tend to work from the inside out. Organizers tend to work from the outside in. And this new kind of work that I'm doing is working kind of alongside,
yes.
At this sort of parallel. There are lots of different ways to get to the same result. Mm-hmm. I've known plenty of very successful people who are very cluttered and disorganized, and it's not a problem for them.
Maybe they have a good assistant.
That's possible, or maybe they just, that's what sparks their creativity or their productivity.
Right.
I think it's when it becomes a problem for them that it becomes a problem. It's you can be an extremely organized person and still be dealing with life issues. It's just that it might just be that at that point in your life, you have the space, the room in your head, so to speak, to maybe finally, confront or look at or explore those things. So I can't really say that across the board, that if you're organized, you're going to be healthier. If you're disorganized, it's going to be problems for you. Like anything, I think it'll help certain situations. It'll facilitate you getting to the next step of what you want.
Yeah.
But
and it's a lot less stressful. Like, I even think, just an example, if I clear off my desk at night, make everything neat and clean, put the papers away. When I go in my office in the morning and look at that, it feels worlds different than when I've left everything out, an old coffee cup with coffee in it and papers all over the place. It just mentally, it's not as motivating, and it adds a little bit of stress early in the morning.
Right. And for you, and for many people, that's true. And I would say, but for a cohort of people, there are, they're used to a certain degree of clutter. But I would say if you find it uncomfortable, then yes, it's always great to come up with new habits and new behaviors and ways to minimize. I mean, life is stressful anyway.
Yeah.
And but there's this tug of war that happens between wanting order and needing peace in our lives and needing to feel this sense of calm that comes from things not being all in disarray. And the struggle, against the, that's balanced against the people who just either they're overwhelmed or they want to hold on to things, or they have too strong a relationship. They're too identified with stuff. So it's not a cut and dry situation.
Yeah.
And
yeah. And we're, like, you're making the point, everyone's so unique. There are general principles about organizing that make sense, but how we apply them is all up to our own unique selves. We've been through the COVID year. I'm wondering, did your business blossom more during? I'd imagine it would.
No, it didn't, because we couldn't work in people's homes, for one thing.
Right. Okay.
Here was the silver lining that came out of it, though. I discovered through this very early on that if I wanted to survive, in addition to benefiting from, PPP loans and so forth, that I had to make it available to people virtually as in any way I could. So I actually discovered through the pandemic that that virtual work, a way of working with people virtually, was something that I could do, although I wasn't sure how it was going to eventually look.
Yeah.
And that's how my personal advocacy work, my helping people with their life issues, suddenly there was an opportunity created.
That makes so much sense. So that was a silver lining for you. It kind of pushed you into something that you were already interested in anyway. Exactly. And I have actually worked with people around organizing virtually. Often it works very well with people who are stuck in paper clutter. So people who are really challenged by paper piles is something I can do virtually as well as in person. How do you do that? They hold up the paper?
No, I don't even have to. I don't even have to know what's on the paper. That's the beauty of it. I have my own system that I teach, called the ACT system. It stands for Action, Contain, and Toss. And it's basically a decision tree. So I don't even have to know what's on the piece of paper. I just, I ask the client, is there an action you have to take with this? Is there something you have to do with it that doesn't include filing or reading? And if not, is it likely you could find this information again somewhere else? And if you could, find it online, how easy would it be? Yeah. And if it's easy, then I ask them, so what do you want to do with it? I never make a decision for them. Okay. And they come to that on their own conclusion. And often what I'll do is I'll have them take the piece of paper and put it behind their backs. And I'll say, okay, imagine that piece of paper just disappeared. Could you find the information on it again if you needed to easily? And they would think about it. And so they're activating a problem solving part of their brain. Yeah. And then they would go, oh yeah, I think I can. I said, well, great then. Well, what do you want to do with it? And they usually say, well, I can let it go. Boom. And ka-ching. Right. Every single time a piece of paper goes into the recycle bag, it's like virtual money in their pockets.
Oh, yeah.
So
that's great. And so do you do that on an hourly basis? Can someone just
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, virtually somebody could schedule through my website at letsmakeroom.com. I have a calendaring link where people can schedule both a free initial 30-minute chat with me, as well as 1, 2, and 3 hour work sessions, either to work on organizing or to work on more interpersonal things that are coming up. And they can book it. Yes. So
I love that. So what if somebody had a bookcase full of, I'm talking about me.
Okay.
I love books, and I have a really hard time letting go of books, even books that I've never read, and then I have ones that I've read and I've loved. Would you do that? Would that be something you would do virtually, is go through books and find, why are you keeping that book? And
I would never ask the question, why are you keeping that book? First
Okay.
of all. I would want to know, first of all, I would want to know what your intent was, like what your goal was in trying to curate the books that you had. Some people have to do that, like my clients who moved back east, they had thousands of books, literally thousands, and they couldn't take them with them. So, but then there are people, so it has to, why are you, what's in it for you? I would want to identify that. And, books, I come from a family of readers and writers, and books are very meaningful to people. So we'd have to create what I call decision tools. A decision tool basically works like a sieve, like a strainer. Mm-hmm. And the decision tools are the things that help you decide whether the thing comes through the strainer or stays in the strainer.
Okay.
So for you, all of those decision tools are going to be very personal. So you mentioned a moment ago, it's a book that I've loved, and I can't imagine parting with it. So that's a decision tool right there. That's okay. If you can't imagine parting with it and you love it, well, then there's no decision here. I mean, it's obvious. Yeah. But then there's going to be the books where you're like on the fence. I don't know. And,
well, a good example is, so someone recommended a book and said, "Oh my God, this is the best book I ever read." And I read a few pages and could just not get into it. I put it on the bookcase. And I can't get rid of it because it's supposed to be such a great book and I'm supposed to love it. And so it sits there. That's a good example.
Well, given what you know about yourself and your life, what's the probability that you would pick up that book again?
Probably not a good one. I've got so many things to read for my work and everything. So very unlikely.
Okay. So in that case, what would you want to do with it?
Probably give it up. But
give it up to somebody specific or just to a...
Usually I donate books or I trade them at the local bookstore.
Is that worth your time?
Good question. I get a lot of pleasure out of it. I like doing it. Yeah. So that counts, right?
So there are a lot of options. You've determined already that it's not likely you're going to read it or look at it again, but you would like to find a new home for it where somebody else could appreciate it. And there are different ways of doing that depending upon what's worth your time. You could have a box or a bag ready for all of the books that you've decided to discard and, put them by your front door. And next time you are on an errand, take them outside with you and drop them off. If you have an enormous collection, you might, arrange for a pickup of them.
Right.
Because there are a lot of charities that will take books. Most friends of the library, of various libraries, want books. Goodwill will take books, though, as well. Salvation Army will take books. But if you want something that's more personal, if you want to get it to a specific place, if that would make it easier for you to let go of, then, is it a senior center that you're thinking? Is it a friend? It's so a lot of people, what they do is they get hung up on not so much do I want it or not, but where should it go?
Yeah.
But you've clearly made the decision like, nope, I have lots of other books I would rather read. And this one I think would be appreciated.
But I do feel guilty that I'm not reading it. So, you know, there's so many things involved.
Because somebody, okay, and then I would probably, so you feel guilty, you know, I would probably want to explore that with you because it came from a friend who recommended it. And, you know,
or maybe I'm not intellectual enough to get this book. You know, there's so many, so many things in there.
Yes, and we'd probably have to unpack that a little bit. And so because you've got some emotional attachments for why you're holding on to it that have nothing to do with the book. I mean, absolutely nothing.
Right.
The fact that you feel guilty or you questioning your own intellectual capacity, that has nothing to do with the book. That's a deeper dive. So, you know.
So this is a perfect little mini microcosm of what you do.
Exactly.
That was great. That was great. I love it.
So what's your decision about the book?
Yeah. I think what I would do after talking to you is I would think about another person that might enjoy it, and I'd try and get it to them.
Great.
And really do that thoughtfully, not just want to give the book away. Really think about who would love this book.
And that's worth your time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
If you had to do that for all your books, though, that could take some time. So they're going to be books. So that's the decision tool. That's what I was talking about. There are going to be books that'll be like that.
Yeah.
It'll be like the decision tool will be called I want to get it to the right person versus I just want to donate it. And so there'll be two piles. I want to get it to the right person, just plain old donate.
Yeah, I love the idea of putting the bag or box right next to the bookcase and every once in a while going in and starting the sorting process. That's a great tool.
Good. Yeah. And there has to be a motivate, because if you don't do it, is there any cost to you right now? If you don't, I mean, moving is one of the reasons people do this.
No,
But
the cost though is that books are all over the place now in my house. I keep finding new places to put books. Something's got to give. So
that falls under what I said earlier about don't make your stuff more important than you are.
Yes. Yeah. Very good. Fired.
Well, okay. Anytime. Call me up.
You know what? Unfortunately, I could talk to you so long about. I love this topic. I really do. But we got to cut it. We got to.
Me too.
Yeah. No, it's great talking to you. But I want to make sure you've mentioned already your website name, but let's repeat these things so people can find you. And I'll also add them to show notes. I noticed that you're not on Twitter, right? You don't do social media marketing, right?
I don't do a lot of it. You know, for better or for worse, I don't do a lot of people. Most people find me through Google. Okay. Strangely enough, and through word of mouth. Okay. Because most of my clients tend to be, I would say, not all of them, but most of them tend to be in their like 40s to 70s. And those folks are more likely to get recommendations from going online or from asking friends. They're not, and if they're going to use any social media at all, they're going to use Facebook. They're not big Twitter users. They're not big LinkedIn users necessarily. So, yeah. And you know,
and so you are a Facebook user? Do you have a business?
Yeah, there's a business page for my company on Facebook. So my company is called Let's Make Room. And I'm at letsmakeroom.com. And I spell my email address is info@letsmakeroom.com. And I spell Liz with an S, not a Z. It rhymes with his and spelled the same way. So it's short for Lizbeth. So Lis McKinley.
Okay, great. And I know one other question people are probably thinking about, and we won't go into it too much now, but the fees, are they based on hourly project, or how do you do that? It's
for the big projects, it's based on the project. So it might be a daily fee or a flat rate. For working individually with me, it's an hourly rate. I do charge for my initial on-site consultations because it usually takes about 2 to 2.5 hours because it includes a demonstration of how I work if it's physical organizing or if it's paper organizing, I'll take them through a demo. And it's a way for them to actually, it's a way for clients to actually see how I work and get a sense viscerally of like, is this somebody I would trust to be in my home? It's also a way for me to see how they make decisions. So.
Right. So it's kind of, you want to see if you want to work with them and you want them to see if they want to work with you type thing.
Yeah, more the latter. It's I want them to really understand what this is about.
Right. Okay.
And then it's not just, like I said, putting things in pretty containers.
Yeah.
Although that's fine too.
Yeah.
And we'll do that if they want it. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay,
all right.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. And I think our listeners are going to find this to be really interesting and engaging. So thank you for being you.
Thank you. It's really, I've been so happy it's been so wonderful for me as well. I'm great. It's been great to see you again. And, if there's anything I can do to help for your listeners, please feel free to, reach out.
I will. Like, if you have any published tip sheets or anything, I might ask for those and I'll put them in the show notes.
My brochure is available for downloading. And also when you sign up there is a free downloadable moving guide that came right out of my head. It's not the typical one that you see on like, licensed moving sites where, it's the obvious, but it's things that I know from my own experience of, things that nobody would consider.
That's invaluable. Thank you. That's perfect. Okay. All right.
Great.
Have a good rest
Wonderful
of your day.
You too, Cathy. Talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.